Hey, I'll check out the audiobook of Lew Rockwell's Fascism versus Capitalism, narrated by me, Scott Horton, at audible.com. It's a great collection of his essays and speeches on the important tradition of liberty. From medieval history to the Ron Paul Revolution, Rockwell blasts our status enemies, profiles our greatest libertarian heroes, and prescribes the path forward in the battle against Leviathan. Fascism versus Capitalism by Lew Rockwell for audiobook. Find it at Audible, Amazon, iTunes, or just click in the right margin of my website at scotthorton.org. All right, you guys, Scott Horton Show. Check out the archives at scotthorton.org and at libertarianinstitute.org/Scott Horton Show. Hey, I'm doing questions and answers stuff over on the old whole show feed. So check that out, scotthorton.org/show, and send me your questions to scott@scotthorton.org or tweet them to me at Scott Horton Show. All right, introducing our friend Phil Giraldi. He used to be a CIA officer, and now he writes, well, first of all, he's the executive director of the Council for the National Interest. That's the America First lobby, the real America First lobby in Washington, D.C. And he, of course, writes for UNS.com and for the American Conservative magazine at theamericanconservative.com. Welcome back to the show, Phil. How's it going?
Hey, Scott. Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Appreciate you joining us today. And, hey, you know, I read a lot of things all the time, and I really appreciate the fact that you've been writing about this Russia stuff and the way you have been. I think I even have a list of recent articles here at the American Conservative magazine. Russiagate's Unasked Questions is the latest.
That's today's, yeah.
Yeah. Before that, Exposing Shabby Intelligence, A Soft Coup or Preserving Our Democracy, Did Sessions Do Anything Wrong? Is There More to the Flynn Story? More about Russia and less about Flynn. All right, so all of these on the what exactly do we know compared to what sort of half-baked assertions are being made. I like the way you end today's article. You talk all about what is proven and or not proven, and then at the end you say, well, I still believe this anyway, seems like to me, kind of thing, after discrediting the assertions backing it. That is specifically the DNC hack there. Reference to that. But anyway, you really do a great job of breaking this down and taking us through the weeds and all of that crap and explaining what's what. So would you do that out loud a little bit here? Maybe beginning with the DNC hack and the Podesta hack and the accusations. Maybe we sort of take it in chronological order from last summer there?
Yeah. Well, it gets, actually, as you say, I mean, what we know is kind of simple. We know that somehow the information that was on the DNC server or somewhere in the system, as well as the emails of John Podesta, of course, who was Hillary's campaign manager, somehow those emails and that information was taken off of the computers, and it wound up at WikiLeaks. We know that happened. And we also know that somebody in the U.S. government has been leaking transcripts of phone conversations, very highly sensitive information to the media. So I would say those are probably the only two things that we know, and everything else is kind of speculative. As I know, I think the last time you and I talked, we were commenting about how this process is grinding on, and yet they never seem to be able to produce any corroboration or any what we would regard, you and I certainly would regard, as hard evidence of any of the numerous claims that are being made right now.
Yeah. Well, so if we start with the hack of the DNC,
well, don't even call it a hack, because some people believe it was a leak.
Well, there you go. Right there.
Yeah,
when it comes to the publication of the DNC emails and WikiLeaks, now WikiLeaks denies, and this is something we talked about before, WikiLeaks denies they got it from the Russians. You've written about how, well, they might not even know they got it from the Russians. The FSB certainly knows how to use a cutout if it comes to them wanting to or needing to use one. But on the other hand, Craig Murray has said on the show that he's met with the leaker of the DNC stuff. And not that he received the leak himself, as the Daily Mail reported. They screwed that up. But that's what he told me. And then it was Ray McGovern later clarified that the Daily Mail report that he said that he actually received the leak himself, that was just Daily Mail style, embellishment there. But he was saying he did meet the leaker in the woods outside of D.C. And in fact, Gareth told me think I can say this. Garrett told me he was at a dinner that night, and Craig Murray was there, and Craig Murray said, I got to go, guys. I got a big meeting I got to attend or something. And that was supposedly when he left to go have this meeting in the woods. So that's at least, I don't know, some kind of reasonable doubt that, as you said, that this is even a hack at all. And in fact, of course, when you think back to what was going on last year with the way Hillary and her people were completely screwing Bernie Sanders and his, it makes perfect sense to think that someone inside the DNC might have motive to expose them for what they were doing, cheating in the debates and all these other things.
Yeah, well, I was at that meeting, too, where Craig Murray disappeared, although I didn't hear his fateful words as he departed. But the fact is, the original account from him that I saw was that he did not meet the leaker. He met an associate of the leaker. And
I may be screwing up and oversimplifying it too. I should be careful about that because I may be oversimplifying the way he told
it. I might have read the Daily Mail account, but that was my impression, that he met an associate, somebody who plausibly represented himself as an associate of a leaker. But Craig Murray has no way of checking people out. He's a retired British diplomat. How does he know who he met and what the reality of that person was? You and I have talked before about false flag operations. And if I were running a really, really sophisticated operation intending to cause major disruption in the American political system, there are all kinds of possibilities that one might be considering. So I'm not sold on the Murray account because Murray wanted to believe what he wanted to believe. Mm-hmm. And I would like to know more about who the guy was, what were his bona fides, what was his connection, what did he claim to have done, and exactly how did he get the information to WikiLeaks if he's claiming that's what he did? So again, what I'm saying is we still have a lot of suppositions about what took place that we can't confirm. Right. And that's what's so mind-boggling about this whole exercise, because it's turning into a pure political catfight, which has almost nothing to do with the facts.
Now, so tell me about this whole fancy bear, cozy bear, this and that, because it seems to go without saying that, well, yeah, everybody knows that that's the Russians, but then we find out that, APT, I don't know if you're supposed to say apartment 28 or 29 or just APT. But anyway, that these groups, Fancy Bear this and Apartment 28 that these are all categories and assignments made by Western observers.
Right.
This is not the name of a gang in Russia somewhere where they call themselves APT 28. So it seems like the assertion is, well, look, we know that this is FSB or we know that this is GRU, I guess in the case of Fancy Bear, if I have that right. We know this is GRU because we know that this is already GRU because of the time before that we knew that it was GRU, which is based on experience of knowing that they are the GRU from before, and that whenever they use this kind of malware kind of thing, then that means it was the GRU. But then, Jeffrey Carr, the computer security expert, he poured cold water all over this last year, and this just seems to keep happening, where I guess now what's happening really is his point of view is finally getting more of a fair hearing. That, hey, man, once some malware is out there, anyone can use it. And just because somebody writes in Cyrillic in their weird code, if anything, that would seem to indicate a frame-up job more than a big mistake on the part of a GRU hacker, probably. In other words, there's just as much reason to doubt this entire narrative of the Russians being behind this as there is Craig Murray being the dupe of the Russians somehow.
Sure. And indeed, as I noted in my article that came out today, there's been more cold water poured on that theory by the Ukrainians themselves, who are certainly no friends of the Russians, but they said that they never detected any of this alleged malware, and the incident that allegedly was connected to it never occurred. So this is the Ukrainian government itself denying that this is plausible. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to believe it's easy to get led down the road on this kind of business, because if you make an assumption in the beginning that it wasn't the Russians, no, it was a leaker, or you go the other way, you say, yes, it definitely was the Russians, then you're going to find things that will justify your point of view.
Right.
But what I'm saying to you, and I know you're savvy about these issues because we've talked about them before, is let's see the hard evidence. And I don't have a comfort level on any of this stuff. What we're hearing is stuff that could be easily manufactured by a sophisticated intelligence organization. They could have contrived all this stuff. And indeed, if you were considering that this might be viewed as a highly sensitive operation, they would have done that. And so, my gut feeling is, yeah, sure, it was probably the Russians, the same way we in the NSA and GCHQ are constantly probing and pulling in intelligence and stuff like that. The Russians do the same thing. But it doesn't mean that they are intending to overthrow our democracy, as the Democratic Party would seem to insist.
Yeah, well, they're in full excuse mode. And that's, of course, the background to all this, right, is the Democrats need a big excuse for why they lost to Donald freaking Trump, of all people, other than the fact that they nominated the single worst person in the whole world outside of the Cheney family anyway. And so, yeah, no, it was the Russians. And then, of course, you have all kinds of interests in the national security state and the military-industrial complex and everybody who wants to make money selling big-ticket items, submarines and aircraft carriers and long-range bombers. And this is forget this stupid terror wars. We got the Russians as an enemy again. We're back in business. So there's a huge agenda to push all these narratives forward anyway. Plus, I guess it makes good TV. As far as all that. But, as far as you saying, give me the hard evidence, I think Jeffrey Carr's message to all of us is you're never going to get it because there's no such thing. You never really can trace these things back and prove. You can assess with medium confidence. And, in fact, that's an important point. You mentioned about the Ukrainian thing there. This is where CrowdStrike, this private intelligence, MIC firm tied in with the state here, of course, where they said, yeah, the same GRU who did the hack of the DNC and or Podesta, they're the same ones who put this malware onto the Ukrainian rebels or onto the Ukrainian government's phone so that the Ukrainian rebels could target their artillery. And look at what a great job they did by targeting and destroying all this Ukrainian artillery. And then that was the part you're saying that the Ukrainian government poured cold water on, which was, yeah, no, we didn't lose all those artillery pieces. What are you talking about? We moved them from here to there a year before you claim this happened, this kind of thing, where they completely debunked it. And then this is in Voice of America, of all places,
right?
Where they completely debunked this story. And then so that was where CrowdStrike said they went from medium confidence to high confidence. And then do I really have it right that the FBI and everyone else involved has said that, well, we just asked CrowdStrike and we didn't even do our own investigation, but they know what they're doing?
That's exactly right. The FBI was given no access to the servers, and they were given the assessment by CrowdStrike. I mean, this is as ridiculous a high level investigation as you can possibly imagine. And the company that has a vested interest in a certain result coming out is the one that did the investigation. I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah. Well, and half of their entire package of assertions here just completely exploded. So much for the rest of what they claim. It seems like to me, better find another source than them if they're going to be that sloppy. And in fact, as you write in the article about the British think tank that helped debunk this too, they were asked and they said, well, we never heard from these guys. They never asked us if they were interpreting our data right, that they used this think tank's data, and twisted it basically to fit their assessment. So that's pretty scandalous as far as that goes. Certainly if it was the Russians making up these lies about us, that would be a story. But,
Sure. I think probably ultimately where we're going to go with this is we're never going to discover who actually the ultimate motivator of these hacks or leaks was or were. All of this is going to remain kind of muddy because any vested interest involved in this will have done its best to destroy the trail or can absolutely conceal who they are. And so that's one thing. And then, of course, the other thing is the actual leak of the telephone transcripts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know that took place. We know this was material that was in the hands of a very tight circle of senior U.S. intelligence officials. And that information leaked. But I would bet dollars to donuts the guys who did this were savvy enough to make sure they didn't leave a trail. So, we're going to have a lot of speculation. This is going to drag on forever. And at the end of the day, nobody will really know what will happen, and the only parties that will suffer from this would be the American public, which has to put up with this crap.
Hey, Al Sky here for Rye Guys t-shirts. Rye Guys, that's WRY guys.com. Great, irreverent, thought-provoking t-shirts upholding a pro-freedom perspective. Inspired by such classic humorists as Mark Twain, H.L. Mencken, and Oscar Wilde, they invoke the wit and wisdom of the past to satirize modern myths. These high-quality shirts for men and women look good and feel good, and they make great gifts. Use the coupon code SCOTT for 15% off. Rye Guys t-shirts at ryeguys.com. That's WRY guys.com. Mm-hmm. All right, now, so if I understand this thing right with let me break this in half, and I'm probably wrong about both sides or what, but there's some kind of FBI investigation that was going on, because after all, they told the New York Times last September, we looked into it, and no, we don't see any credible ties between the Trump campaign and the Russians, so everybody can breathe easy. So we know that they were looking at him, right? But then we also have these accusations that, well, the thing of it is as we know from Snowden, and really we knew from Binney and from Bamford before that any overseas phone call, any and all overseas phone calls, like when I interviewed Nasser Arabi an hour ago, that is absolutely intercepted by the NSA. And then supposedly I'm masked because I'm a U.S. person, but they would have the authority if they wanted to look into my identity. But they certainly know his, and then if they want, they can, I guess, go back and listen to whatever those a call with at least one foreigner on the line. So part of what we have with Mike Flynn, you could, I guess, define in a more, quote, innocent way that, well, he's in the Dominican Republic and he makes a phone call to an agent of a foreign power, the Russian ambassador inside the United States. Well, nobody's a protected U.S. person in that case, or I guess he's a U.S. person but not protected because he's in the Dominican Republic. Anyway, he would have had to have known he was tapped at that point.
He is protected.
He is protected. But that, in other words, though, that still would have been picked up by the NSA, whether the FBI was investigating or not, whether there was any kind of tap or surveillance of Trump Tower or anything else. That would have been just like with the Jane Harmon thing, where she goes, they're tapping me. Well, you were on the phone with an Israeli spy. That's why they were tapping you. They were tapping him, and you were on the line, lady. So that's kind of the same thing here. The Russian ambassador's the agent of the foreign power. Anybody he's talking to, they're going to have that. Then the question is whether they give it to the Washington Post or not. Am I right about that?
Yeah, that's basically
But then that's
correct,
a separate question from an FBI investigation too, though, right?
Yeah, of course. There's a whole bunch of overlapping issues here. Now, the one thing Comey admitted was that an investigation of the Trump team and the Russians had started in July. And now, so this was not the material that Nunes later saw. This was on that information came from December and January after the election. So obviously, we're talking about two different investigations. And the first one had to be ordered by somebody. I mean, the FBI would not just go out and start collecting information on a senior guy in a presidential campaign. I mean, they wouldn't do it. So the whole thing raises more questions than it answers. Really, that's what's curious about this whole business. Clearly they were listening in, and Flynn, even though he was out of the country, is an American citizen. So he should have been masked. And indeed, the evidence seems to be he was masked. And that there were very, very few people that knew about the whole transcript, about who was on the other end. Mm-hmm. And this, again, suggests high-level collusion in the Obama administration. But again, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
By the way, and I forget whether we had discussed this, but was it your impression that Trump was really hiding behind the excuse that Flynn had misrepresented the finest detail to Pence because Trump wanted to get rid of Flynn anyway? Well,
Flynn was becoming clearly a loose cannon on deck. And so there might have been some desire on the part of some of his newer people, like the generals, to get rid of Flynn. I don't know that for a fact. Again, that's speculation, but it's certainly possible that this was considered to be a divorce of convenience for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Since none of us actually know what Flynn said to Sessions, it's again speculation. That's what's so maddening about this whole thing. It's there are just a couple of things that we know to be true.
Well, it's the evil empire. We're all criminologists doing our best here.
That's right. Yeah, it's like the Kerman Watchers, trying to figure out who was wearing which hat when they were standing on the red Army Day parade.
Exactly.
That's that kind of thing. It's crazy.
Well, I think I had read, I can't remember what all now. The only one I think I'd read a few different reports that Trump was getting sick of Flynn before all this stuff about the phone call with the Russian ambassador even came out. And the one that I'm remembering is where it said that Trump was already really annoyed with him. And then he was meeting, I guess this would have been during the transition still, and he was meeting with May, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And Flynn started talking like it was his job to start talking right now, when his job was to stand there and be the butler while the, actual highest level elected officials are having a conversation, and how Trump just took that really bad, like, what are you doing interrupting right now? Just stand there and shut up, kind of thing. And that was just part of the we don't really like each other anymore kind of dynamic that was already happening between the two of them. Sort of seemed like when the Russian ambassador thing came out, he was like, all right, well, now we can go ahead and get rid of this guy. He owed him a job for supporting him all that time during the campain, but nice excuse to throw him overboard,
Yeah. Yeah, it's again, the question becomes, you and I can speculate about things all day, and we'll come up with all kinds of interesting theories. But the fact is that a lot of this stuff it doesn't really rise above speculation.
Yeah. Well, at least my speculation makes a lot more sense than, oh my God, he's a traitor. The former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency is under the control of the Kremlin.
Yeah, That's the most maybe bizarre aspect of this, the people that actually believe that somehow this is a Manchurian Candidate situation. I mean, there's not a shred of evidence of that, and none of these guys would sell out in that fashion. I mean, it's inconceivable, and yet they're playing that card. I mean, there are a lot of things that, there's certainly there's stuff about Trump that people can be legitimately really angry about in terms of what he's been doing and how he's doing it. But that, that's not one of them.
Right. All right. Now, so let me ask you about the GCHQ thing here, because the poor old judge, and you know what? I sort of kind of threw him under the bus a little bit. I mean, I was tweeting to Fox News that save the judge. We love this guy. It's not like he's Brian Williams. He made one big mistake. But, I had rejected his article for antiwar.com when it came in, because just on the face of it, he said Obama broke the chain of command and had this secret agreement with the Brits to do it. And it's the O word in that paragraph just does not ring true to me that Obama would do that. I mean, the way this works, this is my speculation, but it's pretty well informed, I think, would be that the Justice Department and or the FBI would come to him and say, Mr. President, this is what we're doing. And he would say, all right, then. Thanks for letting me know, and that he wouldn't really intervene in that. He wouldn't direct them, and he certainly wouldn't say, go to the Brits to evade the law. But then again, so the point being just that the judge maybe should have left the president out of his scoop, and because there actually possibly was some truth to what he was saying there, Phil. Is that right, you think?
Well, I suspect that he's correct in that this investigation. In fact, the New York Times, I think, had an article on March 1st where they said that the British and Dutch had provided information on the Flynn case, and it was there, and that was with the New York Times current sources, I'm sure, in the intelligence community, and they were saying it. So now basically the judge is saying the same thing, but he's stitching it together and saying this is why they would do it this way. And what he said made a lot of sense, but you're absolutely right. I believe fully that this stuff was known to Obama, but that doesn't mean that he ordered it. This is why you have intelligence agencies. This is why you have loyal associates in the White House who do these things for you.
Yeah, he's smarter than that. He's by the book Obama. Let somebody else break the rules with a wink. but he's not Richard Nixon up there getting drunk and making bad decisions, especially, and I think this is the real context. He made it perfectly clear all summer long that if Trump wins this election, sorry, dude, he wasn't going to sit there and try to pretend to dispute or deny the legitimacy of the election based on any Russia conspiracy theory or anything else. So the idea that you would have to accept the premise that Obama was willing to go to any length to try to stop Trump to do something like this. And I think he'd already made it clear that he absolutely would stump for Hillary, but that was it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. But I think at the same time there are probably people in the White House and in the intelligence agencies who are traumatized by what happened in the election and are basically been playing a game of getting even. And I think there are, from what I'm hearing, certainly there are lots of people at upper levels in places like CIA who are still essentially Obama loyalists. They were put there as political appointees and are still there because the Trump team failed to round up enough people as replacements for them. And it's a process that's going on. But I think it's fair to say there are a lot of angry people doing a lot of angry people things. But when these things rise to the level of conspiracies, that's where I have to draw the line. I think that things happen very often, but that doesn't necessarily mean there was anything conspiratorial.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, we still got a few minutes. So what do you think about reinvading and or escalating in Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, Libya, Syria, and Iraq right now there, Phil?
I think you know what I think about that. I had really, hoped that Trump would retrench in all those areas. I did not feel that badly about his pledge to crush ISIS because I really would like to see ISIS crushed if that's all that they were doing and then getting the hell out. But it doesn't seem that is the way everything is moving. I think we're moving towards a reintegration into all these places with more military, and I keep reading almost every day, as I'm sure you are, new military hardware they're buying. There's new helicopters, $29 billion worth in the pipeline now. This is just crazy. It's Trump is a president who essentially doesn't know anything about foreign policy, doesn't know anything about national security, defense policy, and either he's being led by the nose or he's making a lot of bad judgments all by himself.
Yeah, well, Nicholson, the general in charge of Afghanistan, said again this weekend, it was an interview with the Sunday Times, that he wants another 5,000 soldiers for Afghanistan. And I guess I've been sitting around here twiddling my thumbs waiting for the Mattis report because I thought there was going to be a whole separate Mattis report, but I guess we've heard our number now.
Yeah, I think we have. I think that, but again, these numbers are escalating. The whole situation in Iraq, Syria right now. I mean, I don't even know how many troops there are there now, and I try to follow it pretty closely. I think the number certainly exceeds 10,000, but it might actually exceed it by quite a bit.
Yeah, on the Iraq side, or on Iraq and Syria, and both combined, you mean?
Yeah, both combined.
Yeah, I think that probably sounds about right. And then there's a new one today, and what's the date? It's yesterday, well, last night, I guess. Jason put this together at antiwar.com. U.S. sends more combat troops to Mosul in latest escalation there. And we know they've gone from JSOC to regular infantry, Marine Corps now in Syria as well. So.
Yeah, and of course there's a report today about the investigation into killing 200 civilians in a bombing raid.
Yeah. You know what? The latest, actually, Eric told me this morning that maybe it was the UK that did that one.
Well, could be.
I mean, same difference,
this stuff
right?
never ends.
Yeah.
It never ends.
Well, so, I mean, now here's the thing, though. It's 2017. We're a long way into this terror war now, and we can all read Donald Trump's mind. It ain't hard. You can hear him thinking from here that, well, what you do is you send in the Marines to smash him, right, Mattis? And then Mattis says, yeah, that's what we do, man. We use Marines and we smash whoever our enemies are. And yet we've already seen how this doesn't work. You mentioned, I kind of would like to see him smash too, but that was the job we gave George W. Bush back in September of 2001. Hey, go get the bad guys and then stop. But no, here we are. So, but it seems to me like this isn't the start of the third act, just the third chapter. of this thing. We got another 8 years. Well, in other words, the Obama years might as well be continuing, or even worse, maybe the Bush years maybe might as well never stop. That Trump's the kind of guy who looks at Obama and says, his 7 wars with his little pansy robots and stuff is weakness. We need to really go after these guys, step it up. That's how you win. You just escalate. And they have all these theaters. I mean, hell, they can go to Mali and Nigeria too if they want. They can go anywhere. And apparently this is, am I right? You think this is absolutely Mattis's and McMaster's point of view as well, that like these men are hammers and all they see is nails and off they go?
Yeah,
that's it.
Well, I think you kind of got to triangulate everything that's going on. I mean, I think they're going to play. I quite agree with you. I think they're going to play these games in places that we haven't even been in before. And but what worries me is, what are these guys thinking about the places that really could be a serious problem? Places like Iran. I mean, there hasn't been much talk about Iran. AIPAC is in Washington right now. They're talking up the Iran issue, and it's going to be curious to see if there's anything that comes out of the administration on it. That would be a major war. And that could be a major war that could easily escalate into something awful. Mm-hmm. So let them play around in Gambia if they feel like it. They have to flex our Marines' muscles, but for God's sakes, let's have a little rationality in terms of real issues that can do a hell of a lot of damage.
Poor Gambians. Yeah, man. So, so I was talking with Nasser Arabi and this reporter in Yemen, and we were talking about this piece in the Washington Post about whatever the hell it is. It's about Mattis wants a whole new escalation in Yemen there, and against the Houthis. Al Qaeda got a slight mention in the whole article, but the entire frame is that this is. Like in the dumbest claims of the dumbest neocons, like the Gaffneyites and the most fringe kind of idiots of these guys, that it just absolutely, apparently, Mattis and the rest of them believe that Yemen, the Houthi power allied with Saleh in Yemen, represents the expansion of the new Persian Empire and a whole new Hezbollah-type movement, satellite of the Iranians that must be confronted. And they're about to double down that war in Yemen bad. And on the side of Al-Qaeda in that one, again, Phil.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely insane. I mean, as numerous authorities have commented, it's the most senseless war we've fought since we invaded Iraq. And it's and plus the enabling of the Saudis in it. It's just absolutely insane. And I wrote an article not so long ago. I said basically the scary thing about all this is that these generals and a lot of the people that are in senior positions in this administration actually seem to believe what they're saying. I mean, it's usually these people are talking out of the side of their mouth and they're concealing what they actually think. But they seem to believe all the things that we've been hearing about Iran and also about Russia.
Yeah. That's the part that really bothers me, too, is at least with Obama, you knew he was lying and you knew he knew better. But these guys really going, oh, my God, what are we going to do about Iran? Like, they're really worried? I mean, what are they talking about? And James Mattis, of course, is nothing but the Ayatollah's humble servant. He's the guy that overthrew Saddam Hussein. James Mattis himself was the guy who invaded Iraq for the Ayatollah. Got rid of the Taliban for him, too.
Yep.
Anyway. All right. Thanks, Phil. Always nice yelling at you. I mean, asking you questions and stuff.
Okay, Scott. Take care.
Thanks very much. All right, Sean. That's the great Phil Giraldi. It's the Council for the National Interest. That's where he's the executive director, and they're the antidote to the Israel lobby. He mentioned the AIPAC conference. That'll be our next interview, I'm sure. The upcoming AIPAC conference. councilforthenationalinterest.org. to help support their efforts there. And then, of course, you can always read them at uns.com and theamericanconservative.com. That's the Scott Horton Show. I'm Scott Horton. Check out all the interviews at scotthorton.org/interviews. 4,000 and something of them now, going back about 14 years, I think. Yeah. And check out the questions and answers. If you have questions for me, I'll help clarify, I think. I'll try. That's all at scotthorton.org/show. And check out everything going on at libertarianinstitute.org/Scott Horton Show. And thank you all very much.
Hey, Al, Scott Horton here to tell you about this great new book by Michael Swanson, The War State. In The War State, Swanson examines how Presidents Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy both expanded and fought to limit the rise of the new national security state after World War II. If this nation is ever to live up to its creed of liberty and prosperity for everyone, we are going to have to abolish the empire. Know your enemy. Get The War State by Michael Swanson. It's available at your local bookstore or at Amazon.com in Kindle or in paperback. Just click the book in the right margin at scotthorton.org or thewarstate.com.
You drink coffee, I drink coffee, just about everyone drinks coffee. So why bother with anything but the best? Darren's Coffee is roasted at his new shop in Claremont, Indiana. And coming soon, you can order on Amazon and support the show by using Scott Horton's affiliate link. DarrensCoffee.com. Because everyone deserves to drink great coffee.